McCarthy Insurance Group, serving the community for over 70 years. For home, farm, motor, life, health and business insurance, log on to mig.ie or free phone 1800 50 11 11. Probably your best call in 2024. Charles McCarthy Insurance is trading as McCarthy Insurance Group, is regulated by the Central Bank of Ireland.
Real people, real opinions, real talk radio. The multi-award winning Niall Boylan Show.
You may remember the tragic and landmark case back in 2013 of Mary Fleming, who lost a Supreme Court challenge for the right to an assisted suicide. Mary was a university lecturer who had been diagnosed with multiple sclerosis in her early 30s. For some years, the symptoms were slight, but eventually they were so severe her husband Tom Curran became a full-time carer. Her cognitive function was entirely unaffected, but by the time she took her legal challenge, she had lost almost all of her motor function, which was quite shocking. And she took 22 pills each day to ensure her limbs were pliable and supple for the 7 carers who came in to shower, toilet and dress her and put her back in her wheelchair. Now, ultimately, Mary lost that case, as we know. And I remember at the time the High Court judges said that if they could make a decision to allow her to have her life to be assisted to die, well, they would do that. But unfortunately, the courts or the Supreme Court or the Constitution of the country didn't allow them to do that. Although she did succeed in dying, as she wanted, at home with her family, in December 2013, that same year of the case, sadly. And as a result of that case, the Supreme Court judgment invited the legislators to address the issue of assisted dying. It has taken nearly 10 years, but the first public hearing from the Joint Oireachtas Committee on Assisted Dying took place in June. And this is going to go on for 9 months, and members will consider whether Ireland should allow people to end their lives and to be assisted to end their lives in specific circumstances such as terminal illness. At the same time, we heard today that according to new research, 2/3 of the public in the UK support legalised assisted dying because they've had the same situation over there with, I suppose, a quandary over the law. Because currently, if you assist somebody to die in Ireland, or you assist somebody even to go, as we saw in this country, to go to Switzerland to end their life, you will be found guilty, or you can be found guilty, of murder. This finding comes as a terminal ill Lancashire woman, Rosemary Walker, is prepared to travel to Switzerland to end her life. She has described the UK law against assisted dying as cruel and archaic. In light of these developments, we wanted to discuss the arguments for and against bringing in assisted dying in Ireland. And we want to know how you feel about it. Now, it is a very sensitive topic. Euthanasia is another word. I don't believe there's a difference between euthanasia and assisted dying, to be honest. I think they're very, very similar. But joining me tonight to discuss this, and we want to take your calls too, the number as usual, 087 188 0008. That's 087 188 0008. You can WhatsApp or text if you want to come on. Just WhatsApp us and say, let me on. And they will gladly ring you and let you on. Is Malachy Steenson, who is a solicitor. You'll be all very familiar with Malachy. He's been on the show many times. And also Tom Curran. And Tom, as you know, as I mentioned earlier on there, was not only a carer for Mary, but with her to the end of her life. Good evening to you both, gentlemen.
Good evening, Noel. Good evening. Welcome back.
Thanks very much indeed, Malachy. Malachy, you know, we have choices throughout life. We have free will. And all people are looking for who are in that situation is to die with dignity, I suppose. Isn't that the term that's used, Malachy?
Well, of course people should die with dignity, but that's not what we're talking about here. And what we know is where this is being brought in through Europe, you know, we've 15-year-old children in some Scandinavian countries now deciding that they want to end their own life and being facilitated to do that. We know that in this country, the political establishment and the NGO establishment have no value on human life. And we saw, and you mentioned the abortion referendum, we were told that that would lead to less abortions. And we know that since the abortion legislation was changed in this country, 34,000 children have been murdered before they were born. We know that suicide is the biggest cause of death of our young people, particularly young men, young teenagers and young men in their 20s, and yet there's no discussion or debate about that. What we know about the political class in this country is that they want to bring in a woke liberalisation which has no respect for the sanctity of life, which has no respect for anybody. We see, and you mentioned there, the forthcoming referendums on Article 42, where we're told, and if you ask any of your listeners what does Article 42 say, they will say it mentions women. It doesn't. In fact, it mentions mothers in the home, not women. And we now see legislation now coming forward in other countries where you can effectively transplant a womb. We already know you can.
But Maliki, there's been one case of that in India. I think it was somewhere in India.
All of these things come into the discussion.
But what you're giving me, what you're giving me, Maliki, you're giving me the sky falling in argument, and it isn't always the case. For example, we brought in marriage equality. The sky didn't fall in. You're arguing in relation to abortion, that the numbers have gone up. Maybe the numbers haven't gone up. Maybe there were many people that weren't accounted for that ordered pills online. What I'm saying is,
hold on.
The sky, I'm not suggesting we didn't make it easier for people to have an abortion, but generally speaking, when you bring in legislation like that, you're just accommodating people who are going to do it anyway.
No, you're not, because what we've done in this country is now we have said that it's okay, and that's what these people want. Is they want society to say it's okay. The same as the arguments going before the Constitutional Commission now at the minute, which is another NGO quango set up to deliver what the state and the Liberal agenda wants at the pretext of some kind of discussion or honest debate, when it's in fact nothing like that. We will now move rapidly towards the legalising and the decriminalisation of drugs, and of Class A drugs. And that because the political class wants that, because half of them are out of their head on coke most of the time. And
I wouldn't use the word half, but certainly some of them are, yeah. Okay, but let me hang on. Let me come back to Tom.
To justify things that they know are morally wrong.
Okay, Tom, whatever about the morals, and there's no law says we all have to have the same moral values anyway in the first place.
No, but we all come from a Judean Christian tradition, Niall, which...
but I'm not a Judean Christian.
Hold on, you do, Niall, because for over 2,000...
Well, I might have come from that, but I'm not a Judean Christian now. I don't practice Christianity.
It doesn't matter whether you do or not, Niall. Society is based on that tradition. It's based on the sanctity of life. It's based on the family as being...
Okay. Let me come to Tom. Tom, hang on. I want to be fair. Now, Maliki, hang on. I want to be fair. Tom, just to come to you in relation to what Maliki is suggesting, and I don't want to hang on, Maliki, please. I don't necessarily disagree to some. Maybe there's an attempt there to suggest that we're devaluing life. In other words, as people get older, they think their life is worth less because, hey, somebody wants to bump me off. Maybe I'm better off going. And this is what we have to be very, very careful about with legislation like this, that we don't devalue the elderly, we don't devalue the sick, we don't devalue the disabled.
No, exactly what you're saying to people is, to particularly our older people who are sick or who have dementia, you're saying to them, your life is worth less than somebody else.
Well, I personally not say that. Okay, well, Tom, respond just to that if you can. Does it devalue life?
No, not at all. What you're doing is you're putting control back into the person whose life it is. What was suggested in some cases is you're telling a person how they should live their life. You're giving them a choice, and you're telling them how they should die. Because over a period of 20 years or 10 years or whatever it happens to be, particularly with neurological problems like Mary had, you're dictating to them that they should have a life of misery. When they're perfectly rational and when they can make the choice themselves, you're taking that choice away from them. So that's not valuing life. You're not valuing life. Speak,
that's
please.
Not the argument you're making. You're making the argument that I should say it's okay for you to do that. If an
not
individual
wants
to take their own life,
I'm saying you can live your life whatever way you want.
Okay.
No, I'm not saying that.
Society it's okay. You want legislation.
Okay, Maliki, please let Tom respond. Sorry, Tom, go ahead.
I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying
I think, Tom, your phone line is breaking up badly. Maybe just pop up the stairs or out the back garden or something like that. I do apologise.
I am upstairs at the moment.
Okay.
Sorry, is that it?
Go on anyway. We'll work with it. Go ahead. Go on.
Yeah, sorry. I'm not saying... Sorry, I've lost a bit of train of thought. What all this is about is a person having a right to choose for themselves. And I'm not saying that somebody else, if they disagree with that, they have a perfect right to choose to disagree. Don't enforce your morals on somebody else.
But how do you predict... Okay, so how do you predict, Tom, the law will work Will it only be for people of a certain age? Will it only be for people who have a terminal illness that's sanctioned by maybe 3 experts that will say that they only have a certain amount of time to live? I mean, how do you predict that legislation could work?
One of the places where legislation has been in for a long time is Oregon, in America. And it works perfectly well there. So the original bill that John Halligan put in was based on the Oregon law. It was based there. Now, they monitor it all the time. And one of the things that's very important out there, the death rate hasn't gone up. What maybe people are dying a bit earlier, but the death rate hasn't gone up. They're dying when they can. Some people that feel quite off. No.
I tell you what, I'm going to have to get Jane to call you back, unfortunately, Tommy, because your line is really, really bad and keeps breaking up all the time. Malachy, I mean, Tom mentioned Oregon. I'm not familiar with the figures, but I'm sure Tom is because he studied it quite a lot and he's looked into it quite a lot. And John Halligan's version of the bill that he brought in, although that's not the final bill, obviously, is based on the Oregon law. The debt rate hasn't gone up. In other words, you know, people are not going out and just doing it because it's available. So the idea that you mentioned earlier on doesn't come into it.
Well, no, I haven't got the Oregon figures in front of me, but I think if you look at those figures, you will see that there's a different calculation in how they're made. You know, so it may not, when people say the death numbers haven't gone up, you know, that may not be exactly correct. But you see, what this agenda is about, and nobody can deny this, that it's about devaluing life. It's about saying, what message does that send to our old people or our sick people when we have a state which is prepared to say that if your life becomes something that somebody else will decide is not a good enough life.
But nobody. But hang on. But hang on. But that's not what assisted suicide is. Nobody else is going to decide. I'm not going to decide for me mother or for me granny or whatever it is. That's not the way it works, Malachy. You're making it out that we decide. No, you know, whether somebody else's life is worth living. Pressure, that's not the case.
Niall, societal pressure will be put so much on those individuals that they may well make the decision themselves. It's a bit like people wearing masks. They've done it because the state told them to and because they were continually indoctrinated on the media about it. And that's what's exactly is going to happen here. And if you look at abortion, there are many, many women who regret murdering their child.
I can't imagine for 1 minute. Malik, I couldn't imagine for 1 minute somebody believing that they should die if they're very unwell, believing, or very elderly, that they should die just because society believes they have no value anymore.
We take our old people who are somewhat vulnerable and who may not be well, and instead of looking after them in our own home and putting ourselves out a bit, we dump them into a nursing home. What does that say to an old person when the vast majority of their relations never visit them, for a start? You know, so, and people are just abandoned because they're a burden, and that's the way a lot of old people will feel, and a lot of our sick people particularly will feel. And that's the message that the state wants to send, because they want to reduce the people at the older end of the spectrum, and they want to reduce the amount of children, and they want to, and the other topic you're talking about later on, they want to import tens of thousands of people to fill the vacuum in the middle. And I mean, that's a nonsensical policy.
Well, we'll talk about immigration later on, but in saying that, that's a different argument. The argument I'm having in relation to that is electronic tagging, which has been suggested in the UK. But anyway, getting back to this particular piece of legislation. So do you predict, Malachy, that you're wasting your time, wasting your breath arguing against it? Because as far as you're concerned, sure, it's going to happen anyway.
Well, no, hold on. I'm certainly against it, and I will be campaigning against it, but I don't believe all is lost. I believe we are now on the verge of some change. Maybe not this year, perhaps next year. People are waking up to an awful lot of what's going on in society, and this is just one aspect of it. We see, as I said earlier, you know, the huge amount of children that are killed before they're born. The huge amount.
You're talking about
there's
abortion.
Effectively no children being born with Down syndrome at the moment, because they're all
that's
being
not
killed
true.
before.
That's not true, right? Malachy. I don't know where you got that statistic.
You're telling me there's no...
You said effectively none, but you said effectively none. That's not a factual statement.
Well, okay.
Okay. There may be a decrease. I'm not denying that there may be a decrease.
The vast majority,
as there was in the UK.
Are diagnosed with Down syndrome are killed before they're born.
Meaning the pregnancies are terminated as what happens in the UK.
Killed before they're born. You can use whatever language you want now.
Okay, let me go back to Tom. I think I have his line back again. Tom,
hello? Yes.
Yeah, sorry, Tom. So getting back to what you were talking about, you mentioned Oregon. I mentioned that to Malachy, that the rate hadn't gone up. Malachy doubts those statistics. But anyway, do you have statistics in relation to Oregon, and how do they formulate those statistics then and show us? Because it would be very difficult to get statistics to show that people didn't make that decision.
I'm out in the garden at the moment, so I can't.
Well, that sounds much better. Can I just say, the garden.
And it's lovely night as well. But lovely clear sky out here in the Wicklow Mountains, or Wicklow Hills. But statistics onto you, there's no difficulty with that because they publish them all the time. Switzerland would be another place. But, that there are countries in Europe where they've pushed and pushed and pushed, but that's their choice. We would have that choice as well, to limit or to decide who we allow this to happen to.
Again, Tom,
that's the whole concept. That's the hold on.
Whole agenda
there's no evidence of that. You're speaking about.
We only have to look at abortion. We only have to look at the example of children.
We're not talking about abortion. We're not talking about abortion. We're talking about a person choosing for themselves who's an adult. Mm-hmm. In abortion, it's the mother or the parents or whatever you want to call it that's choosing. We're here talking about a person who's lived a life and who's making a choice for themselves, not for any other life. Well, so there's no comparison.
Tom, maybe you can clarify for me in relation to Dignitas in Switzerland. Yeah. What is the criteria in Dignitas to be approved to allow euthanasia or assisted dying? And by the way, can you clarify something else? Is there a difference between euthanasia and assisted dying? It's the same thing, isn't it?
There is. There is in the English language, the definition. The definition of euthanasia is ending someone else's life for their good.
Okay.
With the assisted dying, the person themselves ends their own life, but in an awful lot of cases, they need assistance to do that. Even the assistance to provide a peaceful death, if they are is perfectly able-bodied.
I know in Switzerland they have to press the button themselves.
Exactly.
Yeah. So what is the criteria in Switzerland? So let's say I'm unwell. Let's say I have MS, for example, or whatever it happens to be. Yeah. And I decide, that I don't want to hang around. I don't want to go through the pain of that or whatever it happens to be. Or I know I'm going to get locked-in syndrome or whatever it happens to be. So what is the criteria in Switzerland? Or is there a criteria?
There is. The Swiss are very strict. It's probably one of the best places as far as that, and as far as Malachy's argument would be concerned, in the world, because they are ultra strict there. They're very Germanic in there. All the I's have to be dotted and the T's crossed and that sort of thing. The first criteria is that the person has to be rational. They have to understand the decision they're making.
So you can't you couldn't have Alzheimer's, for example. No.
Exactly. Yes.
Right,
now,
okay.
this is an argument even among our own side, that at what point, if you make the decision beforehand, and then the other argument would be that how do you know that the person would still want to? But anyway.
That is a good argument, because you may make that decision when you're conscious.
I agree it's a good argument, yeah. But in Switzerland, as you asked, the person has to be rational. And even when they travel there, it's available for their own people as well. But when people travel there, it's the only country in the world where people can travel to. But when people travel there, the day before, there's a psychological assessment to make sure the person understands what they're doing, and it's their choice. Nobody's forcing them into it. It's their choice, and that it doesn't happen unless they pass that psychological test.
Now, when you say a psychological test, is it similar to, I know I'm not being flippant here, but in the United Kingdom, for example, we go back to Malachy's abortion just for a moment. The only reason that you could have an abortion in the United Kingdom is if the woman's life is in danger or suffers from mental health problems. Now, in saying that part of the law is practically abandoned. Anyone can go in and just have an abortion. So are they genuinely very strict about it?
They are genuinely very strict.
That aspect of the law is broken every day.
You're in abortion, that aspect of the law. Yes, sorry, Malik, you're talking about abortion. I just used the analogy, that's all.
Yeah. Okay, as far as Switzerland is concerned, and even in Oregon and Washington and other places where this is a facility for people to avail of, they are very strict, particularly about the rationality part of it.
Malachy, I mean, if it's very strict and if you have somebody who is professional and can assess to make sure that the person is not being coerced into doing what they're doing, and if it's, deemed that it is their choice. Malachy, you're all about choice. You're constantly going on about free will. You're constantly going on about freedoms, and freedom to speak and, hate speech laws and everything else and freedom of speech. You're constantly going, here's a law that actually gives you freedom to do something with your own life, and you're against that.
But the law, you see, this argument is not about somebody taking their own life. It's about somebody else helping them to do it, or society encouraging that type of activity.
No, you're adding to it now.
No, we're not talking about encouraging at all. We're talking about a person making a choice for themselves.
And now you mentioned professionals, right? We have heard professional after professional lie to us for the past 2 or 3 years, blatantly. And, we're at the point in this country and in Europe and in the world, in fact, that you cannot believe anything a professional tells you, whether it's somebody looking into the accounts of RTE or somebody telling you something about masks will prevent spread of COVID, or whether it's somebody who tells you a vaccine will actually stop you getting a virus that it doesn't stop you getting. So, we know the professionals, and we know that the professional class run the country and have run it into the ground. We look at professionals in this country who can't tell you how much the Children's Hospital is going to cost, or how many more billions it will cost, or when it will be finished. We've the same people who can't tell you how they get rid of waiting lists in hospitals. And wouldn't euthanasia or assisted suicide be a great way of reducing the hospital lists? I'm sure Stephen Donnelly is rubbing his hands with glee if this type of legislation come in, because that would get rid of the old people having to wait on hospital trolleys overnight, not the 24 hours he's talking about. This is the lunacy of where we're going in society, and somebody has to say stop. And unfortunately,
hang on. When you say somebody has to say stop, we brought in legislation for different things. I know you don't agree with it because you're quite conservative, but we brought in legislation, for example, for gay marriage or marriage equality. Okay, there were people who said stop. But for gay people who are in love, I mean, that was a wonderful development. So when you say when you say somebody has to say stop, sometimes legislation or changing the Constitution it's not always a bad thing, Malachy. We progress as a society, don't we? We evolve.
Right. The difference between the gay marriage legislation and, say, abortion or euthanasia.
I'm not comparing them. I'm talking about evolving as a society.
Nobody died with the gay marriage one, but if you look at the indoctrination of people, can you actually say that in any of those referendums, people made a conscious choice that wasn't influenced continually by the media onslaught? If you listen to the arguments, just look at the arguments in relation to the upcoming next year's American presidential elections and the demonization of Trump, without any real analysis of what's going on in America. Well, on that point, let me just come back to Tom.
Malachy, could I just say something there? Yeah. You said that nobody died in these other legislations.
In relation to gay marriage.
Hang on, please let him finish.
Will you let me finish, please? Everybody's going to die. We're all going to die. It's inevitable. All we're talking about here is people who don't want a bad death and don't want a prolonged illness, where they have no quality of life, and we're giving them the decision of what time to end that. And that's really all this is about. There won't be people queuing. That never happened in any country where this is available. It won't empty out the hospitals because there won't be that many people wanting to avail of it. So those sort of sensational statements, to me, are absolutely stupid.
Well, what about, Tom, when we changed the Constitution, and I know this, by the way, as far as I know, this is not constitutional anyway. This can be changed by the Oireachtas, or by the legislators.
The Supreme Court has ruled on that there's nothing in the Constitution to prevent it.
Although as goodwill to the citizens, I personally believe it should be brought in, or it should be put to the people anyway. I think it would be fair to put something such a big decision to the people. But in relation to what Malachy's talking about, and I come back to it again, that when we bring in legislation or we make a a radical change to legislation or law in this country, there's always the fear that, if we allow this, this is going to happen. And I've seen that time and time again. When you bring in legislation, okay, for now, it may be assisted dying for people who are terminally ill over the age of 65 or something like that, okay? But within 5 years, campaigners will say, no, we want it to be 50 now. And they don't really have to be terminally ill. They can be just sick. Because we've seen that with other legislation, Tom.
Yeah, absolutely. But isn't that the people's choice?
Well, no, I wouldn't say it is the people's choice. I mean, when we look at the current legislation, and I hate to use the analogy again of abortion, there are campaigners out there who are campaigning to bring abortion in up to the hour of birth. I mean, hardly anybody in this country agrees with that, apart from the campaigners.
Doesn't mean that it's going to happen. There are campaigners out there for all sorts of things, but that doesn't mean that it happens.
Well, I've seen the minority in this country sway the law, and I've seen it happening.
The NGOs back something, then it becomes the reality. But, on whether the people should have a choice, sometimes the people shouldn't have a choice, because there are some fundamental facts of life, and the sanctity of human life is one of those core issues that people cannot, on a whim or in a referendum influenced by the 30-odd thousand NGOs paid $6.5 billion in this country to articulate woke liberal ideology, that they decide something is right. People shouldn't have a choice.
That would suggest that a person's life isn't their own.
No, a person's life is their own.
They should have no choice. They should have no choice about how they run their life or end their life. We've already given them a choice about how they could end their life. We've legalised suicide.
Anybody can end their own life when they want.
With respect, Malachy, I think Tim knows about the sanctity of human life, and I think he'd be well aware.
What Tim wants, and you see, always when these, and I'm not trying to make this in any way personal to Tim. We know his story, but he is one of the advocates for it. So I'm coming at that perspective, right?
Yeah.
The reality is that if we legislate and allow this, the door is open.
If you want to make it personal, hang on. If you want to make it personal, make it personal. Could you sit there and look at Mary? No, I'm just saying, Malachy. Would you have been able to sit there on the opposite side of a sofa to Mary Fleming while she was in, the height of what she went through when she went through the courts because she didn't want to be in this world anymore? She wanted to die with dignity. Could you have sat there and told her, no, I'm not going to help you? Could you have done that?
I don't know. And you see, unless somebody is in that actual situation.
But that's what I'm saying.
I may take a view, but Niall, if I did...
Well, then you've just lost the argument now, haven't you? Unless somebody's in that situation.
No.
Tom was in that situation.
That's what we're talking about, is people in that situation.
You're missing the point of the argument. If I was in that position, I would take a view, and I would do it or I wouldn't do it. But I wouldn't be asking society to say that it was okay. I wouldn't be asking society to exonerate me from whatever I did or didn't do. I would say, I'm going to do this. That's my decision. And I will either help that person or I won't. But then
you should be allowed to make that decision.
But hold on.
You should be allowed.
I'm not going to ask.
All we're saying is all I'm saying is allow the person to make that decision. You're saying you might decide it for yourself, you might not. But you wouldn't ask society to endorse it.
I mean, the last person that made that decision in this country, Malachy, to assist somebody by buying plane tickets or going to a travel agent, should I say, to assist somebody to go to Switzerland, was brought to court. Thankfully, wasn't convicted in the end, but charged with murder.
Yeah, it wasn't murder.
But the campaign is for society.
It was assisting in suicide.
Assisting in suicide. Sorry, I do apologise. But thankfully, wasn't convicted in the end.
Some people will make that decision, and you can be sure it probably happens.
But do you think if you made that decision for a loved one or somebody, and as you said yourself, unless you were in that position, you wouldn't know what you would do. Do you think, let's say you did make that decision to assist the person, I'm not saying you put a pillow over their head or anything like that, but they said to you, look, there's 2 tablets there and a glass of water. If you give me them, I can pass away peacefully now. Otherwise, I'm going to be in pain for the next 3 weeks. And you decided, okay, I'll do this because I love that person so much. Would you expect to go to jail? Do you think somebody should go to jail for that?
Well, firstly, I'm sure that if I did do that, I wouldn't be going out and rabbiting about it and saying that I had done it. But if it came to pass that I was done for it, so be it then. if I went to jail.
And do you think that would be... But,
if I
Malachy,
prepared to do
you'd
that.
be the very person to be fighting in court that you deserve not to go to jail because you because you felt you did the right thing.
Yes, but if I went
Yeah, well
to
then,
jail
okay.
for
Well then, if you felt you
so
did the
be it.
right thing as a person, surely society should provide legislation for other people who are in that situation to do the right
No, you see,
thing.
Niall, you're twisting what... That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that if I made that decision to do that, then I would live with the consequences, whatever they may be, right? Now, I wouldn't be asking society to say to me that it's okay and that it's okay for somebody else, because once you open the door, we know, and again, I have to come back to the abortion issue because that's the template that we have. We know once you open the door, it's a slippery slope. We see the push now to do away with the 3-day wait in relation to abortion and to extend, the time period. And, all of these things are incremental. The same as if they get legislation to decriminalise class
A drugs.
And then it will move on to Class A drugs, and then it'll be to legalise them.
I don't think there is an interim period. I think they're just
talking.
talking about Class A drugs. But sorry, Tom, in relation to the Oireachtas and how that's going currently at the moment, I know it's Michael Healy-Rae is looking after that at the moment. How long is that expected to go on for?
They finish up before the end of the year, and I think until March. My understanding is that they will make their suggestion, and it's only a suggestion, back to the Oireachtas in March.
And will you be making submissions yourself? Are you involved in that?
I will be making a submission on the 8th of October. Yes.
Malachy, will you be making submissions, or are people from your side making submissions?
Well, I'm sure there'll be people from my side, not me particularly necessarily. I haven't even thought about it, but perhaps I will. But I'm sure there will be many people on my side because, the silent majority, agree with me on most things, despite what
I don't know. You know what, Malachy? I believe this is very similar to abortion. And I've always said it in all the years of talk radio, abortion was the one topic that literally split people down the middle. And I do believe, with respect, Tom, as well, that this particular piece of legislation does split people down the middle.
And that's why mainstream media
on the side of majority
continued the indoctrination for years.
Sorry, Tom. Tom, would you not agree that it kind of does split the population down the middle? There is a percentage that don't agree.
What I was trying to say was that the last poll that was done here, 79% of people were in favour.
And who is that?
That's not the silent majority. That's a vast majority.
Well, in the last one of the last polls here, 75% of the people said they were opposed to open borders. And, the state...
the government dismissed that one.
That's different. Are we on here to talk about this subject, or are we on to talk about everything?
Hold on. We know that in relation to the hate speech legislation, the vast bulk of the submissions put into the state in relation to that legislation were against the legislation and were totally ignored then by the state. So, the state will do what it wants, and it will use the convention, the Constitutional Convention to rubber stamp whatever.
I know, Tom, we all elect the state. We're the people elect us.
Exactly, yes.
Yeah, but that doesn't...
They're there to represent us.
Well, you could argue that they are there to represent us, but are they actually representing the majority?
Well,
in a lot of cases, they don't.
That's the theory, yes.
So I do accept Malachy's point that sometimes polls can be quite meaningless, because I've seen polls that some of them are outrageous, to be honest with you. I don't believe them for a minute. But Tom, going forward with this, I mean, the legislation itself, what kind of criteria would you like to see? You'd like to see what they've done in Oregon. So maybe explain to me a little bit about what that means. So if I'm 65 and I'm diagnosed, say, with terminal cancer and a doctor gives me 6 months to live, does that entitle me, in your opinion, or do you believe that should entitle me to?
The 6 months to live. One of the things that is very difficult, particularly with people with neurological problems, just marry. We were asked when we went to the High Court report.
Are you gone back into the house again, Tom?
No, I'm here. Sorry.
Okay.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you now. Yes, go on. You were asked one.
We were asked by the court asked us to get reports from a neurologist. And one of the questions that was asked was life expectancy. And it's impossible to give a life expectancy with a person with a neurological disease. The only real disease that a person can be given a time to live is cancer. But what we're talking about here is a quality of life. When a person goes past that quality that they don't want to endure anymore, then that's their right, I think.
And who decides, apart from the person themselves, who decides or what expert decides if that person has a quality of life?
Isn't the person's life themselves what decides their quality of life? The decision is for them, not for anybody else to come in and dictate to them. But
there's people out there. There's people out there who believe they've no quality of life, and they probably have.
But are you also the thing of pain? Some people can tolerate pain much better than other people can tolerate. Mm-hmm. So nobody else can say that. Oh, that pain is negligible.
But are we not? When you say that there's not a time period, and then it depends on the person and whether they believe they have a quality of life. Well, then we're being quite vague again, aren't we? Going back to the original bill, which was quite vague.
The part of it is it with a certain end of life period. That's the only bit that's vague. But that's vague with most diseases, with most life limiting diseases, not terminal diseases. MS would not be regarded as a terminal disease. People don't die from MS; they die from the symptoms.
Malachy,
so it's not a terminal illness.
Malachy, just a final point before I go into the break, and I'm going to take a few callers on this as well, and thank you both of you. But Malachy, I heard a wonderful story. When I say a wonderful story, you probably don't think it's a wonderful story. Going back about 7 or 8 years ago, a girl in America who was only in her late 20s was diagnosed with brain cancer. And it was quite, she was at the latter stages before she was even diagnosed. She was suffering from migraines, and they had no idea at the time what it was. She was given approximately 3 months to live. She sold her house, sold her car, packed in her job, went on a cruise around the world with her best friend, came back and had a party in a hotel in America. I'm not too sure what part of America it was. And had a beautiful suite in the hotel, but obviously all the money she'd got from selling the house and the car and everything else. And invited 10 of her friends to this particular party where she had a nice send-off. She went up to the room with, I don't know, I think in this particular state they give them tablets or something like that to take, whatever it is, whenever they feel they're ready. And she passed away peacefully after taking the tablets. To me, that sounds, in the situation she was in, that seems like a nice way to go. Would you not agree?
If that's what she wanted to do, but she wasn't asking me or you to
there
say
you go.
it was okay.
There you go. That's what she wanted to do.
So,
she was assisted in doing that by a doctor giving her those tablets.
When we talk about quality of life, right, there are thousands of children and young adults in this country with physical and mental disabilities whose parents have to beg this state to get even a weekend respite a couple of times a year.
Malachy, I was a carer for 20 years.
And we're not prepared to do that for those people. We're wasting time. What we're actually saying to those people, hold on, let me finish the point.
I'll let you come back in, Tom.
What we're saying to those parents is that your children's quality of life is so little that the state doesn't give a damn, and that here's the option we're going to give.
That's not. I don't know how you're equating the two of them together. Well, sorry, Tom. Go ahead. Respond to that, Tom.
No, what I was saying on help people trying to care for somebody else, I totally agree with Malachy. I was a carer for a long time, and the arguments we had over getting things like respite or getting even care to the house or anything, even palliative care that was necessary. I completely agree with that, and we're very inadequate in providing for our people. But that's a different topic altogether. What we're talking about here is a rash adult making a decision for themselves, like that woman that you mentioned in America.
I just thought it was a nice ending to a story, a sad story.
Yeah, we're not asking people like Malachy to help them. There are plenty of people who are quite willing to help.
Say that it's okay.
We are. Well, we're not asking you to say it's okay. You can always say it's not okay.
You're asking me to vote for it, and you're asking me as a member of society that society says it's okay.
Okay. Well, finally, because I have to go into a break. Tom, do you believe, even though it's not needed legally, do you believe there should be a referendum anyway? Because the state has the ability to do that.
I would have absolutely no difficulty with a referendum.
Yeah.
Absolutely none.
Malachy, would you be okay with a referendum? Because then if people don't want it, it won't happen.
Well, unfortunately, I don't think that we need to go down this road at all.
Well, no, that's neither. That's not the question I asked you.
A referendum. No, hold on.
So you don't even want to give people the choice, but go on, yeah.
Hold on. As I've said earlier, there are some things that go to the basis of human life and to the sanctity of our life and to the type of society we want. And I don't believe that selecting a group of our people to be killed off is something that the people should have any say over. I think it should be intrinsic within our basic legislation that we do not kill people. We don't hang people anymore for committing murder.
That's not a good analogy, man. That's silly. That's silly.
We have now. No, it's not.
People. Hold on. You're talking about criminality now. We're not. We're talking about innocent people who live their lives and are choosing to die with dignity. That's what we're talking about. Stick to the subject, will you? Tom Curran, listen. Thank you very much indeed, and I'm sure we're going to hear a lot more about this debate certainly over the next 9 months to a year.
Real people, real opinions, Real Talk Radio. The multi-award winning Niall Boylan Show.
Ireland's classic